you can really see them, starting to hit their stride as
Hmm.
filmmakers, and
Yep.
just in the way that the story is told and the way that
Sure.
it's edited,
Yep.
the camera work, like you can
Mm,
see them, starting to really mature into the filmmakers that, will go on and just do whatever they want to do in whatever
absolutely.
genre,
Yeah.
and knock it out of the park.
Welcome to My Movie Story. I'm your host, Brian McAleer. This is the podcast where we dive into the movies that have shaped us. Each episode, we sit down with a special guest to discuss their all-time favourite film, the movie that changed their life, and the one film they think everyone needs to see. Get ready as we journey through the cinematic worlds that make us who we are. This is My Movie Story. My guest for this episode is Rob Mabry. Rob is an accomplished filmmaker hailing from Austin, Texas. His passion for movies runs deep, both as an avid audience member and a dedicated filmmaker. Film has always been a powerful means of connection for Rob, a love that took root in his early years and continues to shape who he is today. Rob recently premiered his feature film, The Legend of El Chupacabra, an independent horror comedy which is available on Blu-ray and DVD, and you'll find out more about his film in this episode. Now, here's our interview with Rob. Well, hey, movie lovers, welcome to My Movie Story again, and welcome, Rob, to the podcast. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing great, Brian. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for joining us all the way from Texas. And you were just telling me it's getting pretty warm there. You're coming into summer at the time of this recording, and you'll probably laugh that here in Melbourne it's like 2 or 3 degrees Celsius each morning at the moment, and
Hmm,
foggy, and yeah, it's horrible.
brisk.
But yeah, you're enjoying your summer, and we're freezing to death over here, but it's fine. But yeah, great, well, great to have you here on the podcast, and we've got a few different films to talk about, and I guess the main thing that people are going to notice who are watching this video is there's awesome posters in the background, and you're a filmmaker. So yeah, tell us a bit about that, Rob. What's that all about?
Yeah, I just wrapped my first feature film. It's called The Legend of El Chupacabra. It's actually available on DVD and Blu-ray, and hopefully in the coming weeks or potentially months, it will make its way onto streaming platforms. It's been a bit of a laborious process to make that happen,
Yeah.
so I'm waiting on that, but. I have been a writer all my life. I was, the type of kid who, drew comic books in his bedroom, and I wrote plays, and
Yep.
forced my friends, to act and perform the things that I had written. So I've always had a passion for writing and a love of film. Um, and my big dream was to be a Hollywood screenwriter,
Yep.
and so I thought that I would run off to Hollywood and make it big in the film business as a writer. um, Ended up having a family instead, and it kind of put my dreams of filmmaking on hold. But I'd say it was about 7 years ago. The dream kind of came back,
Yep.
and I realized that the technology had kind of democratized filmmaking,
Yep.
and if you could make a movie with a prosumer type camera, and so I
Yeah.
started doing short films, and I probably made 20 short films,
Wow.
and worked my way up, learned the craft, and finally felt like I was ready in 2021. I made the decision to make a feature film, and of course, you have to write the script. There's
Yep.
pre-production,
Huge process,
filming,
isn't
and
it?
and
Yeah.
then and then post production. But in October of 2023, had our premiere of the film.
Yep.
Just had another premiere in Austin, Texas. The first premiere was in San Antonio, which is my hometown.
Yep.
And yeah, so we had another premiere in Austin a few weeks ago, and then the
Right.
DVD and Blu-ray release, and so it's been a really, really exciting process.
Fantastic. Yeah. And what a journey, and good on you for like not letting go of that, and, continuing with that passion. And it's hard, definitely, when you start a family and you've got a job and a household to run and all those other things that come with it, right? But, there's always a way. When there's a will, there's a way, So it's definitely, seeing that you've achieved that's definitely kind of reignited my passions as well. Like when I was younger, I was dabbling in script writing and I was going to make a short film and kind of went off in a different direction. But that idea is always there. It's always kind of the ideas that keep bugging you, I think, are the ones you've got to pay attention to and do something with it, right? Otherwise, you'll just
Yeah.
regret it if you don't. Yeah.
Yeah, I tell people it's never too late to make your first movie, and
Yep.
also you can't make a good movie until you make a bad movie. So,
Yep. Awesome.
get out there and just do it. Don't let
Have a go.
excuses stand in your way. Have a go.
Exactly.
There you
Have a
go.
go. That's right. Yeah, and just quickly, we'll definitely share the links to your film, but can you quickly just tell us what it's about and just so people get an idea of the film itself?
Yeah, Legend of El Chupacabra is a sci-fi horror comedy. It is heavily weighted to the comedy because that's really my passion and what I love.
Yep.
It's a story about a group of kids, the Chupacabra Club. They two boys and a girl have an encounter with the Chupacabra when they're little kids, and one of the boys, sort of a nerdy kid, never really lets go of that experience. And he lives in this little sleepy town in the hill country of Texas. And he has devoted his life to tracking the chupacabra.
Mm,
And every 4 years, there are these disappearances and killings in this town.
yep.
And when it happens again, he has to kind of bring the Chupacabra Club back together as adults, and of course
Yep.
they have zero interest in his little mission,
Sure.
but he's determined,
Yep.
and they swore a blood oath. So he holds them to this blood oath to
Yep.
track down the Chupacabra and save the town. So
Awesome.
that
Yeah.
is it in a nutshell.
Yeah, definitely. And I watched the film and it was fun. It was funny. The creature design is really inventive and, quite intimidating actually. That creature. So, and our viewers can see the mask there in the background. So it's a good
Yeah.
ride. It's good fun and hopefully we'll see that on some streaming platforms here in Australia and we'll definitely help you reach some Aussie horror fans because there's definitely plenty of us down under who will watch that stuff, including me. So yeah, congratulations on the film, and yeah, hopefully we'll see more films in the future. Have you any other kind of ideas in the works, or anything else coming up?
Yeah, I've got really two scripts that I'm polishing right now. One is a mockumentary horror comedy. I'm a big fan of the mockumentary format. Like
Yep,
Spinal Tap is a movie I
of
probably
course.
should have picked as one I would want to talk about because it's one of my favorite movies
Hilarious.
of all
Yeah.
time. And then of course, The Office. I'm a huge fan of that show, and
Mm,
so I feel like I've got a unique take on kind of a horror mockumentary that I don't want to spill too much about. Um, but the other
sure.
project that I have is a sequel of sorts to the Chupacabra.
Oh yeah.
It's set in the same town, this fictional town of Bluffkin, Texas. And what I plan to do is bring sort of the same cast back together in a completely different story about an alien invasion that
Yep.
happens in this town. But it would have a very similar tone, comedic tone, to
Yep.
Chupacabra. And so I guess Bluffkin is kind of like, Stephen King has Derry, right? The
Yep.
town where he sets a lot of his stories,
That's
and
right. Yeah.
Bluffkin is my Derry.
That's
So
your Derry.
I
Fantastic.
hope to make three films in that setting. So
Fantastic. Excellent.
yeah, wish
Excellent.
me luck. It's
Yes,
it's
we
not cheap
do.
to make a movie.
Yeah.
That's why I have two ideas, because the horror mockumentary is a much more affordable project
Mm-hmm.
than
Yep.
the alien invasion story,
Yep.
which probably is going to require a bit more of a budget. So I may
Right.
make that mockumentary first, and then get to the sequel a little later. At least that's
Cool.
the plan now.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we will watch this space in anticipation, and yeah, definitely. And at the end of the episode, we might get you just to tell people where they can connect with you and follow your work as well.
Yeah, that'd be
So
great.
let's dive in, shall we, Rob? So we've got three films as usual on our podcast to talk about. Your all-time favorite, the film that changed your perspective on comedy, in this case, and the film you think everyone should see. And after watching your film and then revisiting these films, I sort of maybe a little bit of inspiration you drew from these films. That was my
Oh, it's
interpretation.
in there. It's
It's
in
in
there
there.
for
Yep.
sure.
Great. Okay. I
Yeah.
picked up on that. Yep. So yeah, I'm really keen to hear about, how you arrived with these films and how they've influenced you and how they've connected with you. So we'll start with your all-time favorite. And all I can say so far is this is a part of a saga. We've already featured one of those films on this podcast. So it's great that we're kind of working our way through the rest of the series. So yes, please tell us, Rob, what is this all-time favorite movie of yours?
My all-time favorite movie is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Fantastic.
We have no time. If you still want the Ark, it has been loaded onto a truck for Cairo.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. A film from Steven Spielberg and George Lucas.
The original, the original Indiana Jones,
Yes,
which was
it's
originally
not in
just
my
called
mind.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, wasn't it?
It's
Yeah.
not Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
No,
It
no,
is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
just Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah, and then they changed it to Indiana Jones, and I'm guessing if you can get an original DVD or video that just says Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's probably be worth a bit of money now. Things like that become
I hadn't
collectibles.
thought of that.
Yeah,
Yes, the
could be.
titles in the film still just say Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's it, which tells you everything you need to know really about this film. So obviously, most people watching and listening to this know who Indiana Jones is. But just in case we're talking to someone who's, maybe come out of a 40-year coma or has never seen the film, take us back to the original Indiana Jones tale. How do we meet him, and what's his story?
Yeah, so Indiana Jones is an archaeologist. The film takes place, I think, around 1939. He is sort of a swashbuckling adventurer. One of the things I love about the character is while he is a hero, he fails frequently in the film, right? He doesn't always get exactly what he needs the first time,
No.
but he inevitably perseveres.
Hmm.
A really great hero character played by Harrison Ford.
Yep.
There's the movie takes a lot of inspiration from, I think films in the 50s, the serials of the 30s and 40s. And
Yep.
for those who may not know what a serial is, back in the 30s and 40s, if you went to see a movie on a Sunday afternoon, a matinee, they would play a sort of 10-minute, short film. Usually an adventure. Zorro was one of the early and very popular serials, and I think was
Yep.
part of the inspiration for the character of Indiana
Right.
Jones.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those serials, was adventure stories. The sort of pulp comic books inspired these serials, and
Yep.
so that was a lot of the genesis of this character of Indiana Jones. And in the Raiders, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, he is in search of the Ark of the Covenant, which is a kind of spiritual and mystical object that the Nazis are after. And so he is, on a quest to recover the Ark of the Covenant, and so are the Nazis.
Mm.
And so he finds himself battling the Nazis and a French archaeologist by the name of Belloc, who is his
Yep.
nemesis,
That's right.
who always seems to get the upper hand. Every time Indiana Jones thinks that he has what he
Mm.
needs, Belloc seems to sweep in and take it away from him.
He's always there, isn't he? Yeah. He's kind
Yeah,
of a pain. He's the thorn in his side, isn't he? Absolutely.
he's a great nemesis character for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, out of I guess all the villains across the films, I think I remember that villain the most, because he wasn't necessarily like an evil man. He was very passionate, like Indiana Jones, passionate about archaeology, passionate about being the first to claim the prize. But obviously he wanted to, he wanted it for the glory and the fame and the fortune, whereas Indiana Jones was like, we need to get this artifact and get it to a museum where it belongs, right? So to
Yes.
keep it out of the hands of these, these filthy thieves and that sort of thing. So they were kind of polar opposites in a lot of ways, weren't they?
Yeah, for sure. Two sides of the same coin, I
Mm,
think. And whereas Indiana Jones achieves his goals through grit and determination.
yeah.
I think the character of Belloc always seems to be cutting corners,
Mm,
and of course has the Nazi army sort of behind him, supporting
sure.
him,
Yep.
and making it quite a bit easier, I guess, in that regard.
Definitely. And that's right. He is paired up with the Nazis, isn't it? Because they obviously want to take over the world and have possession of everything for power and whatever it is. And then as we find later on in the film, it's too much power for anyone to control. And yeah, it doesn't end well for them. But yeah, let's go back to the original, I guess, attraction to Indiana Jones for you. So the original film came out, I believe, 1981, I think it was.
Yeah, yeah,
So
summer
yeah.
of 81.
Yep.
Yeah, there's as I thought about the film and kind of its influence on me, and why I'm so drawn to it. I think there's a couple things. I actually grew up for at least a portion of my life, in Germany, in a small town called Bad Aibling in Bavaria, on what was a U.S. military base. But prior to that, it was actually a Nazi military base.
Okay.
And so as kids, we had this legend that there was Hitler's gold hidden somewhere on this base, and it was really interesting. Like as kids, we had the freedom to run amok on this military base, and we could actually get into the tunnels that existed,
Wow.
from the Nazi era, and just traverse the base going through these
Amazing.
tunnels. So we would go on these adventures,
Wow.
looking for Hitler's lost gold, which I'm not sure who made that up. We never found any gold. But so I think there was that sort of aspect of adventure, from my childhood, and also a familiarity, with Nazis as a young kid,
Mm,
um, that I think played into my appreciation for the film for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of it. And then, on that base, every Sunday I would go to a Sunday matinee.
Yep.
My mom would give me $1, which was enough to get into the movie and get some popcorn and get some soda.
The
This
good old
was
days,
close.
hey?
Yeah, well, it was close to 50 years ago. So I guess that dates me a bit, but I would actually see those serials that I was, talking about it,
Yeah.
that being inspiration, for the Indiana Jones films, because they would play them before the movies in the matinee. And so, that was one of my favorite parts. And, I'd go back every week to see what happened,
Yeah.
in Zorro's adventures. And so
Yep.
I think that was another thing that drew me to the film.
Wow. What a fascinating childhood. Just picturing what you described there, like being able to roam this old base and these tunnels, like that must have just been so much fun as a kid, and
What it makes you wonder what my parents were thinking. And we always say, like, oh, it was a different time, but
it
it was
was,
really
yeah,
a
and
different time.
it
There was
was
no
a
cell
different
phone. It
time,
was like, be
Yeah.
home by 6.
Mm.
Okay,
Yep.
I'm gonna go,
That's
have
it.
an adventure.
Yeah, and even
So
myself, as as a kid in the sort of early to mid 90s, it was very much the same thing. It was like we would just disappear for a day. There was no mobile phones. My mum would say, "Look, at this time, find a payphone and call me. Just let me know you're okay." And as I got older, that kind of wore off. But yeah, when we were young, she had no idea what we were up to. So if you're watching this, Mum, you're about to find out. I was climbing up really tall trees, and we would hang off the top branch, see how long we could hold on. And this was a good like 60, 70 feet off the ground.
oh
We'd
yeah,
go into old derelict buildings and ride our bikes through there. It was great. It was fantastic. And
yeah.
I don't know how kids these days can they don't know what they're missing out on, I think. But anyway, just a different time, wasn't it?
Oh, it absolutely was. Yeah.
Yeah. So Or at the time you were living there and exploring this and watching the matinee serials, was that around the same time the film came out, or was
No,
shortly after that?
it was shortly before
Before? Yep.
that, and I lived in Germany. You know, I think I was like 8 years old to 11 years old, something like that. I lived there twice. So I when I was in high school, also spent time on the same military base. But um, I came back, and then I think probably had maybe 2 years of middle school and high school. And then in 1981, summertime, I remember seeing the film in theaters. Went with my best friend at the time. His name was Kevin Miles. I don't think we've spoken in 40 years, but Kevin, if you happen to hear this, I hope you're doing okay.
Hey, Kevin.
You know, but my best buddy at the time, and yeah, you know, we went and sat down in that darkened theater,
Mm,
and you know, experienced an amazing action film, you know,
yep.
filled with comedy and
Yep.
romance, and um, you know, you're just drawn into the movie from the
That's it.
very beginning.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
it starts with the Paramount logo and the mountain, and then it dissolves into the actual mountain in Peru.
Hmm.
And you know, get your first glimpse of Indiana Jones and just silhouette from behind.
That's it. It's a great
You know,
intro.
with yeah, with the famous, you know, fedora. And then, you know, for the first couple of minutes, as he's, you know, traipsing through the jungle, you know, you get a glimpse of his whip, you know, his gun, you know, his jacket, you know, famous leather jacket, all those sort of iconic things. But he's still a mystery,
Yeah.
you know, until one of his sidekicks decides to turn the tables on him and pulls a gun, and then
Hmm.
of course you hear the crack of the whip, and he, you
Yeah.
know, grabs the gun,
That's
and
it.
the guy runs away. But it's just
Yeah.
that whole opening sequence is just
Fantastic.
amazing. You
It
know,
really
Steven
is.
Spielberg at the height of his powers.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And it's such a great way to introduce the character and the first film in I'm sure in the back of his mind Spielberg probably had other stories in mind, but he's like, if I only make one Indiana Jones film, I'm going to make the best one I can. And I'm assuming, like most diehard Jones fans, this is the best in the series. Would you say so?
By leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Not that I don't love the other films in their own way,
Hmm.
um, but I just think Raiders of the Lost Ark is the total package. You know,
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
in my mind the greatest action movie of all time.
Oh, it really is. It really is because like you said, he just continues to fight through grit, through perseverance. He's constantly getting hurt. He's constantly, the odds are always against him, and somehow he pulls through. So he's believable. He's like this guy who's just fumbling through caves, tripping over ropes, and he's like, all right, I'll just get up and keep going because I can't let these precious artifacts fall into the wrong hands. And that's what he's all about. Is about preserving that history, no matter what it takes. And that makes for such a compelling character. And the reason why there were so many other stories and the whole Young Indiana Jones series as well. Like there's just a wealth of
Yeah.
stuff there. We've talked about that in a previous episode. And you kind of answered one of my questions I was going to ask you is your favorite scene from the film. Would it be the opening, or is there maybe another scene you like just as much?
Um, it, it is the opening
Hmm.
that, you know, sort of, you know, the quest and all of the booby traps,
Yeah,
and you know, the moment when he gets to the idol and he, you know,
yep,
measures out the
that's right. The
sand,
classic
and you
switch.
know,
Yeah,
and then everything seems great, but all of a sudden that
yeah,
pillar starts to go down and he realizes, I need to get the hell out of here. And
yeah.
of
It's
course,
great, isn't it?
the other guide, played by Alfred Molina,
Yeah,
in one of his very first roles, you know, of
yep,
course, throw me the whip, throw me the idol,
that's right.
and you know, the guy hightails it out of there, and of course, you know, 20 feet later, we see that, you know, a booby trap has just gone straight through
That's
his
it.
head.
Again, yeah,
And then, you know, he Indiana Jones gets, you know, to the point where you think, oh, he's going to get out, and then you hear the boulder, you know, that's
oh, so
coming
good.
down, and
Yep.
yeah,
Yep,
Yeah, it's just an amazing, opening
it
to
really
a
is.
film, and sets up, tells you just about all you need to know about the character,
Yep,
and then sets up things later like the
yep,
snake and the plane, and he hates
that's right.
snakes, and
It
then
introduces the
later,
villain and all of that. Yeah,
yeah,
it's fantastic. It really
yeah.
is. I could just
So
watch
so
the
that's a
opening over and over. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Let's do that.
Yeah, absolutely. The rest of the film's great as well, but just that opening
I,
scene is just
I would say
you can't fault it.
the other thing that sticks out for me, I mean, oh man, there's just so many great sequences in the film. And in fact, when George Lucas and Steven Spielberg initially came up with the idea, they really structured it around the set pieces that they wanted to do, like
Hmm.
the action sequences. And then they brought Lawrence Kasdan in, who's a terrific screenwriter. He wrote Empire Strikes Back, many
Yeah,
other great films, to sort of fill in the narrative. But that's one of the things. One of the reasons I think it's so strong as an action film is it was like Spielberg and George Lucas knew they were going to get this
oh
opportunity,
yeah,
to go nuts,
yep, they
and they
did.
just did it. So
Yeah, they pulled out all the
the
stops. Yeah, you had the
yeah,
director of Jaws who knew how to make a thrill ride movie from start to finish, and you had George Lucas with all his special effects and set piece. It was a
yeah,
perfect winning
yeah.
combination, and it started this long-term relationship and went from strength to strength, didn't it, with those two? Yeah,
Yeah, so just like fast forward, rewind, stop anywhere,
yeah.
start watching it, and you're going to be entertained. So,
Absolutely. It's a classic film, yeah. And I do have to just ask quickly, any of the sequels that you like, would you have sort of a ranking, or is it just the first film for you and that's it?
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, I think, is probably the next one on
Yep.
the list for me.
Yep.
His relationship with his father
It's
and
great,
Sean
isn't it?
Connery's performance, like
Yeah.
it's classic. It's very close.
Yep.
In terms of quality and just
For
my
sure.
appreciation.
Yeah.
I really like Dial of Destiny.
Hmm.
That was one that I was definitely entertained.
Yeah.
So
Wasn't
I
too
think you
bad.
probably
Yeah.
rank that third, and then Crystal Skull and Temple of Doom. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know why Temple of Doom is not higher for me, and maybe I need to go and get back and give it another chance.
Hmm.
Not that it's not an entertaining film. It's
Yep.
just kind of lower in terms of the
Yeah.
finals.
Yeah, I think it's a darker, more morbid kind of film, and Indiana Jones is you see a different side to him in this film. But yeah, I guess each have their own sort of unique flavor and everything. And we've had The Last Crusade on the podcast, episode 25 with Todd, and now we've got Raiders of the Lost Ark. So, any other guests out there who want to talk about those films, let me know, and we can we can complete the saga. But yeah, fantastic. Obviously, I think we could go on about Indiana Jones all day. But we've got two more films that I know you're really keen to talk about. So we might jump to the next film if that's all right, Rob.
Yeah,
And this is
sounds
now the
good.
film that changed your perspective on comedy. Now this category it's films that are profound to the viewer personally. They change them in some aspect. In some cases, it changes their life. It changes their understanding of people or a time in history or a certain issue. But for you, this has changed your perspective on comedy because let's face it, this is one of the all-time classic comedies, and it was groundbreaking for its time. And yeah, I'll let you tell us what this film is and why did it change your perspective on comedy?
Yeah, so the film is Mel Brooks' Blazing Saddles.
I'm laughing already.
So just sign this right here.
Okay, give us a hand here.
All right, sir.
Work, 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 work.
Okay, folks, let's wind it out.
The heroic sheriff rallies his citizens in the wildest finish the West has ever seen or the movies have ever shown.
Ow! Oh, ow! Have you ever seen such cruelty?
It feels like a goofy thing to say, when you talk about, how it changed you, like Blazing
Sure.
Saddles. Come on, what is that all about?
Absolutely. It's a classic. It's a comedy masterpiece in every way. So yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And I say that it changed my perspective on comedy. Maybe it's more accurate to say it gave me a perspective on comedy. And again, this is at a very young age, but before I moved to Germany, my dad was working for the government. I think I would be 7 or 8 years old, and we had to move out of our house. Prior to making the trip to Germany, and so I lived in a hotel, probably for a month and a half, 2 months, something like that. And this was at the time when there wasn't cable TV.
Hmm.
You had an antenna and maybe two stations,
Yep.
but hotels would have like a closed circuit,
Right.
a way to show a film, in a hotel room. And the film that happened to be the film that was playing when I was living in this hotel for weeks on end was Blazing Saddles.
Right.
And so my little sister and I, who was probably 3 years old at the time, we watched that movie over and over and over again. And I'm sure that the major appeal of the film was the campfire scene where the cowboys are farting because they've eaten beans.
So good.
But we watched it over and over and over
And
again.
it's still funny
And
after all these years. It never gets unfunny, that scene, I reckon.
no, it's terrific. And in my film, The Legend of El Chupacabra, there's a scene where
Yep.
one of the characters has some gastrointestinal distress, I guess
Yep.
is how I would describe it. But that is my homage to the
Right.
scene in Blazing Saddles. And
That
so
was kind of what I
um,
picked up on when I was watching. I'm like, hang on.
yes.
I see the reference now. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a few other nods to Mel Brooks and his style of comedy, but yeah, we watched it over and
Yep.
over. I think that it sort of helped to build my sense of what comedy is
Hmm.
and how to make people laugh. And I to this day, any sort of warped comedy, I am on board 100%. I
Yep.
just
Yeah.
really like everything from Monty Python,
Yeah. Yeah.
early Woody Allen films,
Hmm.
the airplane movies, the
Yep.
Fairley Brothers.
Yeah. Right. Right.
They're all influenced, by the same things that I am influenced
Yeah.
by.
That's it.
But yeah, that's definitely the style of comedy that I enjoy, and I
Yeah.
attribute that to seeing Blazing Saddles 100 times as a 7-year-old.
It kind of really started a lot of that, didn't it? And I think, yeah, the comedy, like you mentioned, the comedy of Mel Brooks and Monty Python and all those other guys, they sort of take the serious of life and find the funny side to it. Like if you look at all their films, it's about all these things we can relate to, or or a moment in history like the Monty Python stuff, and find, well, where's the humor in this? Because we can't take ourselves too seriously in life, right? We've got to be able to laugh at ourselves, I think, and
Yeah,
laugh at what our flaws and our faults. And obviously, this film, has takes a lot of, I guess, controversial topics and makes them funny, like the fact that it focuses on a man who's a sheriff who's a black man at a time where it was like, what's going on here? And the scene where he rocks up into town on the horse with that big smile and he's just like tipping his hat to everybody, and they're all
yeah,
just like they've seen a ghost, and the guy up on the roof who's yelling out, and then the bells are ringing, and you know what he's saying and what they're covering up. And it's like, wow, like talking about films today and the the sensitivity and conservatism of viewers today would be like, oh, like you can't say that. But back in those days, it was like anything was on the table, right? It has no shame, does it?
Yeah, I guess I think, I mean, so Blazing Saddles is a satire of westerns,
Yeah,
right? Like nobody had ever done a satire of western. I think Mel Brooks was making a point, sort of about the whitewashing,
yeah,
that happens. Happened in Western film, right? And that's
right.
kind of the tradition. And he wrote the film with Richard Pryor. And so, I think Richard Pryor was, trying to make a point as well, right?
Mm,
But these characters, like when I watched the movie, it was almost unsettling. I watched it recently because I knew we were coming on the podcast, and I was just
yep.
like, oh wow, we
Yeah.
are hearing the N word a lot here, you
Yeah.
know,
Very brave.
um,
Yeah.
and 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 I was really trying to, um, you know. Wrap my head around how I felt about that, right? Because
Mm,
it is
yep.
disturbing to hear that word, in the wrong context. But I
Absolutely.
think at the time the film was controversial because of that.
Yep.
It certainly was a different time, but
Sure.
for people who would say, oh, you'd be canceled, if you make that film today. Um, there's a lot of movies out there that use that word, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Plenty.
are working, less hard to make a point about society,
Yeah.
than Mel Brooks was at the time.
I
So
think so.
I don't want
Yeah.
to get
Good
too
point.
too hung up on that, but
Sure.
I think if you go and you watch that movie, like understand that it's satire,
Hmm. That's it.
that it is of its time, and at this point, that's what, nearly 50 years old,
Yeah.
at this
Yeah.
point.
74. Yeah.
Um,
50 years old. Yeah.
and just despite that, it's still a hilarious movie.
It is. It really is. And the Mel Brooks brand of comedy is quite unique. And any of these other films that sort of you want to give a mention to that you enjoy?
Of Mel Brooks's movies,
Yeah.
uh, Young Frankenstein,
Yep.
I really think is his best movie.
Yep.
Um, yeah, that is just another terrific satire of monster films.
Yep.
It just has so many memorable lines,
Hmm.
and I think is just absolutely hilarious.
Yep.
Another great performance by Gene Wilder and
Yeah, he was great, wasn't he?
Madeline Kahn, and yeah,
Yep.
so that's one that I would definitely recommend. And History of the World, Part One,
Yep.
is another terrific film. So I
Yep.
think for Mel Brooks, those would be my top three.
Wow. Yeah. Cool. Well, and I guess I was introduced to him in the 90s with Robin Hood Men in Tights, if you remember
Ah,
that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because
yeah. It's funny.
yeah,
Spaceballs is a great
yeah, Spaceballs is not too bad. Yeah.
movie too.
Very silly
But
slapstick kind of stuff. Yeah.
yeah, not
Absolutely.
my top three, but it's still a good one.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think, and then there was another one he did in the 90s with Leslie Nielsen, Dracula Dead and Loving It, which was a bit of a flop. But yeah, look,
Yeah,
I guess I was introduced to him through Robin Hood Men in Tights, and then I asked my dad, what other movies has this guy made? And that's when I went back and watched Blazing Saddles for the first time. And I think I was about 12 when I first watched it, and it was just on TV like that week, coincidentally. And
yeah,
obviously the scene when they're all sitting around the campfire, scoffing down the beans, and the first one burps, and you're like, okay, it's a burp. And then one of them farts, and then the next one farts, and this goes on for like a good minute, and it's like a choir, they're all just one after the other. And
yeah.
I remember watching that scene, and I was literally on the floor laughing. And then my dad walks into the lounge room and sees what scene I'm watching, and he has a laugh, and I'm like, it's
Yeah,
just comedy gold. It really is.
yeah. It's good stuff.
So funny. Yeah. Yeah, so Blazing Saddles, a landmark comedy film, still funny today after all these years. definitely worth a watch, I guess, for people who are interested to see how, these older comedy films and filmmakers sort of have influenced other comedy films over the years. It's an interesting kind of retrospect, and yeah, you'll just laugh. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, thanks for bringing it to the podcast. It's a
Yeah, you bet.
we don't have a lot of comedies on our podcast, but we're getting there. We're starting to stack them up.
All right.
But finally, Rob, we've got one more film to chat about, which is the film that you think everyone should see. A comedy of sorts, but in a league very much all of its own, because of its, I guess, its very well-known famous directors who just make whatever the hell they want to make. And yeah, this is a perfect example of some of their early work. So yeah, please tell us, what is this film that everybody should see?
This is the Coen brothers Raising Arizona.
Give me that baby, you warthog from hell!
Hey, you want to know another thing? I'm going to be a better person from here on out. Let's go get Nathan Jr.
Raising Arizona, a comedy beyond belief.
Well, it ain't Ozzie and Harriet.
Fantastic. Starring a young Nicolas Cage and Holly Hunter. I think it was one of her first roles, I believe, because she'd come from like a stage
Yeah.
background. And a few other, Coen Brother regulars who pop up, like John Goodman and, a couple of other guys. So Raising Arizona, interesting title for anyone who's not heard anything about this film, even though it's got a bit of a cult status. It's, it has a very kind of a unique sort of flavor to it, and it's not for everyone, for sure. But yeah, I mean, tell us, what is Raising Arizona all about?
Yeah, so Raising Arizona is about a career criminal, petty thief, I guess, generally somebody who robs convenience stores, character played by Nicolas Cage. He repeatedly gets thrown into county jail,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
The woman who is taking his mugshot is Edwina, I think. I hope I have
Yep.
that right.
That's right. Yep.
Played by Holly Hunter, and so he develops a relationship with this woman in a really sort of entertaining sequence where he just continuously commits a crime and is brought back and has his mugshot taken by Holly Hunter's character.
Yep.
They eventually get together, and for a short period of time are in wedded bliss when she decides that she would like to have a baby. But unfortunately finds out later that she is barren. And so she convinces H.I. McDonough, Nicolas Cage's character, to kidnap a child from a wealthy family who just had quadruplets.
Yeah.
And by their reasoning, they have more babies than they need. So what is the harm in kidnapping this child
Yeah,
and
sure. They've got four more.
raising it as their own?
Hmm.
Of course, that's not how the parents see the situation, and they send some rather nasty characters to try to reclaim the baby, and hilarity ensues.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And the Coen brothers have done a handful of comedy films over the years, and they're all about real oddball characters and sort of ridiculous situations that probably stretch, reality a little bit, but they're still kind of rooted in some kind of reality, right? So it's a real, yeah, kind of off the wall kind of film, and I loved it. I've
Yeah.
haven't This is the first of the Coen brothers comedy movies I've watched. I've watched more of their dramatic stuff like Fargo and No Country for Old Men and those kind of things. So yeah, really good, and a good film to start with and kind of work your way up, because all of their films are just really, really unique, and they somehow find a way to get these characters that are wrong and are doing the wrong thing, but still you like these characters and you root for them. And the thing is that they're a couple that have kidnapped another couple's baby. Like it's a pretty terrible thing that they do, and one of them is a police officer, right? But still, you kind of
Yeah.
want them to become parents and all of that. So I guess yeah, what is it about these characters that just makes us love them so much despite what they've done, in your eyes? What makes them so
Yeah,
liked?
I think it's a great point that you make that um, the characters are sort of outlandish, um,
Yep.
but have very human instincts,
Hmm.
and I think we can all relate to wanting to be a parent. Not that everybody does have that aspiration, but we understand that. Um, there were things in the film that I think are really relatable. So, one of the scenes or sort of storylines that plays through the film is that Nicolas Cage's character, has two buddies who escape from jail, right?
That's right.
John Goodman being one of them,
Yep.
and they just show up on his doorstep uninvited.
Yep.
And so he's in this very awkward position of wanting to, be cool with his prison buddies,
Of course.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And sort of please them and look like the man of the house.
Yep.
But Ed, his wife, is just pissed off, doesn't want him there,
Yep.
doesn't want to
Yeah.
have anything to do with them, and just knows that they're trouble, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think we've all been in those, sort of similar situations, right? Where you've
For
got
sure.
somebody, who maybe is a house guest, and you just don't want them there,
No. No. But
but you
you
want to
feel
do
like
the,
you
the
feel like
right
a
thing by
loyalty
your
to them
buddy.
and all of that. Yeah. Yeah. He definitely feels this loyalty
Yeah,
to them.
so that was one of the things that struck me, and
Mm.
and I feel like one of the reasons I chose the movie as, hey, this is something that everybody should see, is because I do think there's, a lot of appreciation for the Coen brothers, and we sort of understand their genius as filmmakers. But I the Big Lebowski, I think, is,
Mm.
one of the movies, like, that's the one that everybody thinks about.
Of course. Yeah.
Fargo, which Fargo's a brilliant film, and if I had to rate Coen Brothers films, Fargo would probably be at
Oh yeah.
the
It's
top
fantastic.
of my
Yeah.
list. But I feel like Raising Arizona is sort of a hidden gem.
Absolutely.
Not everybody knows about it,
Hmm.
and if you love the Coen Brothers, you can really see them starting to hit their stride as
Hmm.
filmmakers, and
Yep.
just in the way that the story is told and the way that
Sure.
it's edited,
Yep.
the camera work, like, you can
Mm.
see them starting to really mature into the filmmakers that will go on and just do whatever they want to do in whatever
Absolutely.
genre,
Yeah.
and knock it out of the park.
Absolutely, yeah. And eventually they got the recognition they deserved when they won Best Film and Best Directors for No Country for Old Men. And quite often, I like to watch clips from the Oscars, and I watch the acceptance speeches of all the, best directors and over the years. And when they won it, one of the Coen brothers said, thank you for letting us play in our corner of the sandbox. And that always stuck out for me. It's like, yeah, I guess Hollywood is a sandbox. You've got all these big kids in there with different ideas and playing with different toys. Michael Bay does explosions, James Cameron does groundbreaking CGI, and then you've got the Coen brothers making these character-driven things unlike anything else that anyone else can do. And yeah, they're just off in their little corner, and I thought that's just a great way to express that there is room in the sandbox for everybody. And then, we'll stay on our side, you stay on your side. We're both going to create something, but we can share this space and we can do it together. And there's room to kind of embrace different styles of filmmaking. And I think it was really good that the Academy acknowledged that film, as dark and as disturbing and violent as it is. It definitely
Yeah,
was the
yeah.
film that deserved to win Best Picture, in my opinion. And the fact that they can direct a film like that with one of the most chilling villains of all time, played by Javier Bardem, they can make these movies like Raising Arizona, which was hilarious, and I really loved the character. I think it was was he like that drifter, that bounty hunter who's just constantly riding that motorbike and just shows up? Like,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
What were
the
your thoughts on
biker.
this guy?
Yeah.
Like, I was watching this, I'm like, this guy needs his own movie, but he was fascinating character. What did you think of him? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I loved the sort of the B story, right? Like, he's just constantly moving forward, right?
Mm.
And we only see him in little glimpses,
Yep.
throughout the film, but we know that things are going to come to a head
Yeah.
at some point, right?
Yep.
And like he's going to catch up with this couple that has kidnapped this baby, and that sort of makes it, all the more menacing, just because we're really only seeing him. It's very visual,
Yep.
but he's, a very imposing character,
Yep.
and so yeah, it's funny in Chupacabra. I actually had a very similar sort of storyline. I had a character called the Man in Black, and he was pursuing one of the characters throughout the film.
Yep.
And in the end, I cut all of it out,
Okay.
just to tighten up the film, because it was initially, the first cut of it was like 2 hours long, and I was just like, that's too long for a comedy. I've got to pare this down. And that was the one thing, because it was really played for a laugh at the end, and it wasn't integral to the story. But anyway, I'm just making that connection now, that
Yep.
I probably was influenced, by that.
Yep.
And I know that the characters in Chupacabra also are sort of, this, heightened, characters. One of the main characters is just an absolute buffoon, but they all are also sort of grounded in reality, right? And have real desires and
Yep.
meaningful relationships. And so I think that's probably, some influence from the Coen brothers for
Yeah.
me, for
Absolutely. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. And they are such influential filmmakers because, they take these really interesting characters in these unbelievable situations. And they're all like, in a lot of ways, they're all very simple characters. If you look at, the dude from Big Lebowski and Nicolas Cage's character from Raising Arizona, and all of the characters in Burn After Reading, they're all just really simple, pretty, stupid people, really, but find themselves in these
a
like
lot of dimwits
a lot of
their
dimwits, and
films.
they get you
Yeah.
to sympathize with these dimwits. I think it's great. It's great, and it you enjoy yourself, and just the energy of the film and the style in which it's made. It doesn't really let up. And I know I really love the scene where he goes to get the diapers and decides he's gonna rob the bank again, rob the convenience store, and this chase ensues through town. The one I'm talking about with the famous music,
Yeah.
and everyone's just shooting at him. Like, do you have a favorite scene from the film? Would it be that one, or a different scene, or?
Um, Boy, that's a good one. When he actually goes to kidnap the baby,
Yeah.
and the baby
Yeah.
escapes, and there's sort of the tension of him, potentially being caught, but he's just a boob, right? Not very smart, and
No.
not particularly capable, and so things don't go well. But for me, I think my favorite part of the film is really the opening, and
Yep.
and Nicolas Cage's narration of the
Yep.
film, because he really narrates the entire film,
Mhm.
and I'm not often a fan of that.
Yeah.
I think it can be a cop out, sometimes, like you don't have a tight enough story, and so you need a narrator to try to make sense of it.
Yeah. Bit of exposition.
But it was very clearly and very clear and very intentional by the Coen brothers, to have him narrate the film. It's almost poetry, the dialogue that is the narration. And in the opening, when we're introduced to the characters, and he keeps getting arrested and coming back and having his mugshot, turn to the right.
Yeah, that's right.
That's just great stuff.
It is. It really is. It sets up the story really well and really quickly, and it doesn't really sort of explain the attraction, I guess, between Edwina and HI. Like, she's a police officer. Is like, is she just attracted to the rebels, or the outlaws, or was there something else there? Because then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, they're hitched, and they're inseparable after that. So it was a really interesting relationship, I thought, because they kind of do the reverse. Like, he, by the time they're married and ready to have a kid, he's ready to be clean and have a job and do the right thing after years of being in jail. she's the former cop who's now like saying, we're going to steal a baby, right? So they kind of almost switch roles. She becomes the criminal mastermind, and he's just like, yes,
Yeah,
dear, I'll do whatever you want me to do, right? So it was a great
that's right.
relationship. I found that really entertaining. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
definitely.
He wears her down. That
He
was
does. She's
my
got a lot of patience, that woman.
rationale for why
Yeah,
she ends up with him. Yeah, he
absolutely.
was
A lot of
just
patience
wasn't
for
gonna
sure.
wasn't gonna take no for an answer.
Definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah, it's a great film. I find the Coen brothers is there's nothing like it. So I think I totally recommend this as a film everyone should see as well. So, I think it's a great choice. It had always been on my list to watch for many, many years. And great thing about this podcast is when a guest says, I want to talk about this movie, I'm like, right, no worries, I'll go watch it. So I'm getting to watch all these films with a purpose, and I was laughing out loud quite a few times. I really really enjoyed it. So between Rob and myself, anyone who's watching or listening, definitely watch it. We strongly recommend it. And that brings us
Yes,
almost
give
to the
Raising
end.
Arizona a chance.
Give it a chance, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that brings us almost to the end, Rob. But I do have also one question. I'd really want to pick your brain on it because you're a filmmaker and you know a lot about film and the art form and all of that. I like to ask some of my guests this question, like the future of movies. Is there stuff you'd like to see more of, get made, less of? What do we need to pay more attention to? So yeah, I guess in your mind, future of movies, how would you like that to be? What would you like to see happen?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I guess what I might like to see less of is the reliance that big studios have on visual effects. Um, I like I love superhero movies and I love the Marvel cinematic universe, but I do feel like it's become a bit diluted,
Mm,
and I think part of what bugs me about the movies is that it just it feels like somebody is barfing visual effects onto the screen and nothing is real.
hmm.
And so, that's my take. I would like to
Yep.
see kind of less of that.
Yep.
I would like to see more films released in theaters.
Yes.
There actually is interesting that there is a decline in the number of films that are being released into theaters. And there was a
Mm,
time when I think it was like 200 movies a year or something, and
yeah.
now we're down to about 80 movies.
Yep.
I do think there's an opportunity for indie filmmakers in that arena, to maybe get more indie films into theaters, and so hopefully
Hmm.
that's something that people like myself who are out there making movies on our own can take
Yep.
advantage of.
For sure.
But I fear that the cinemas, the theater may not survive if we
Yeah.
aren't supporting those theater owners and getting movies into theaters. So
Hmm. Hmm.
it would be a real shame if we lost that experience. It's a communal experience.
Absolutely.
There's something completely different about sitting in a theater with an audience and experiencing a film, and so
Yeah.
it's my hope that there's a resurgence of
Yeah.
movies in theaters.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there, and I really have some of the same concerns and hope to see a resurgence as well. That obviously recent world events locking us down and keeping us out of movie theaters, and just the changes and the trends in movies has questioned, where do cinemas and theaters fit in? And I feel there's a place for them. We just have to kind of reinvent the reason why we go there and revive it, like you said, like a resurgence as well. So I
Yeah.
think hopefully they will be there because yeah, there's nothing better than going to a movie, and I love horror movies as well. Sitting in a theater, in a dark theater, watching a horror movie on a big screen. And on occasion, I've gone a few times on a weekday in the middle of the day, and I'm the only one in the cinema, which it's twofold. It's like, oh, where is everyone? This is a shame. But then again, I'm like, I have this whole theater myself. This is pretty sweet, right? Put my feet up on the chair, take my shoes off. It's fantastic. It's great. So you can't beat it. You
Yeah.
can't beat that
There-
experience, Yeah.
there's there's definitely something to be said for watching a movie with an audience, and there's also something to be said for being the only guy in the theater watching a movie,
That's
because
right.
then you got it all to yourself.
You do. It's great.
Yeah.
It's great. And I can dream for a minute like I'm like George Lucas, and I've got my own theater, and I just watch movies, which I'm sure he has something probably similar to that, you know. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
This has been great, Rob. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast and sharing the story of your filmmaking journey and your movie. And, you know, wishing you all the best for the success of the film and getting it out there. And thank you for, you know, your insights on these three films, which are all classics in their own way. And hopefully people who haven't seen some of the lesser known ones will go and check them out. And it's been a pleasure. So thank you for coming on My Movie Story today.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Take care.
Take care, Brian.
See you later. Bye.
We swear to rid the town of this beast. If we die when we try, we won't care in the least. All for one and one for all. Solemn promise to answer the call.
El Chupacabra.
Incorrect. Greetings, fellow cryptid hunters. It's your boy, Pete.
Remember our blood oath?
We swear to rid the town of this beast.
You faint at the sight of blood. That's what it was. That's what I remember.
This town's got blinders on.
La 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 la.
There are those who are intellectually and genetically qualified to address the situation.
Hey, y'all! Hey! They got them herbal boner pills.
And then there's,
Y'all want some?
this town.
Look at you and your sassy mouth and your big city titties.
What if Roy went with you on your little Bigfoot camping trip?
Kill it. Save the town. Be a hero, Pete.
Wonder what's next for the Chupacabra Club. Oh, wait. I know. Certain death.
And you gotta watch who's standing by your side. And you...
Thanks for tuning in to My Movie Story. We hope you enjoyed today's episode with our special guest and the movies that we talked about. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on Spotify or your favorite podcast platform. Your support means a lot to us. You can also stay connected with us on social media for all the latest updates and special content, and you'll find our page on Facebook. Until next time, take care and enjoy the movies. See you on the next episode.